Okay. So what we'll be talking is the UN Charter. Okay, the UN. Okay, if you read in advance. But by the way, for this week we'll be talking international for those who just joined the class. Okay, and part of that is the international law, the UN Charter, and other international organizations. Okay, so I will be talking about things which I have not discussed and uploaded in YouTube. Okay, so the rest are complete. All you have to do is to view it. But now what I'm talking is the UN, which is not yet uploaded. So here, well, if you understand, there are actually five organs of United Nations. Okay, to start with, organization was created actually during World War I, and it replaces the League of Nations, and the purpose of that is to unite the world so that there will be no war that will happen in the future after that. Okay, so sad to say, right now there's a an invasion. Okay, we'll discuss about it and what's the problem. In fact, I'm planning to write an article, the problem of this um, United Nations Charter. So I'll go directly to one organ which is very important. Okay, by the way, the highest is uh, sec- the general, the secretariat. Okay, so and the General Assembly composed of the several nations. Okay, and all nations. Okay, those who sign and who are a peace loving, because one of the criteria by to join a United Nation is that you must be a peace loving country, and there's no exit. Okay, why? Because the meaning of you voluntarily exit, okay, not joining the United Nation, it means that you are not a peace loving anymore, and no country would tend to become a not a peace loving country. Okay, so the organ, the general council, the security council is known as the police. Okay, in our organization we call it as the police. They are the one who will implement and punish whoever who are the violators. And these are 15 members, and five of them are permanent. Okay, so and these permanent are the big countries, and who has the tendency really of invading. Okay, so Russia, China, and United States, France, and Great Britain. So these countries has a potential of colonizing other. Why? Because they're confident. Why? They cannot be replaced, and they have the veto power. Okay, so what happened in the in the war between Russia and Ukraine is that when Security Council calls for the denunciation of the invasion, which is, by the way, a violation of the UN Charter if a country invades another. Before it's allowed, okay, but now at modern times, invasion is clearly, it is strictly prohibited. Okay, why? Because right now there's no more islands to be invaded. All are now owned by somebody, by some other countries. Okay, so and if there's a conflict, it must be resolved peacefully. If it cannot be resolved between two countries, then they can ask for another as an arbitrator or third party, and that third party must be that decision must be binding. Okay, and when you say binding, it must be an agreement between heads of state, which they call themselves as gentleman's agreement. So if it's a gentleman's agreement, that forms part of the law. Okay, it's binding as if it is an act of the government. Now, another organ we have trust. Okay, trusteeship council. Okay, after World War II, there are countries that are declared to be trustees, and these are now owned by United Nations. Okay, and then we have the Economic Council. Okay, before there are trust territories. Okay, when a country after World War II cannot be administered properly, then it become a trustee of the United Nations. Okay, so but the important part of that is the alternate members of the Security Council. Okay, so the 10 are had their terms. Some are 2 years. Okay, and they will be replaced by another. Like I think Africa has two representatives. Okay, and this will be in different times, and they can be replaced after their term expires. While the five, as I've said, they are so blessed, okay, that they cannot be replaced, and they had the veto power. So what happened when that issue was brought to the Security Council? Everybody denounces the acts of Russia, but Russia, of course, as being member of that, who he is present and still voted for against, and meaning he vetoed. So if you veto it, then the next body who can decide is all the members. Okay, the General Assembly decided um, against except China, Saudi Arabia, and India. Okay, so imagine of all this, upon knowing that's indeed illegal, still they voted. They wanted to play safe. Okay, maybe because there will be another acts as well that they plan to do. Okay, hoping all the while that this country will also vote in their favor. Okay, as you know, right now there's an impending also invasion by China to Taiwan. Okay, they always claim that long time ago Taiwan is part of their territory. Okay, until now they do not recognize Taiwan as an independent country. So they also even claim that a long time ago Philippines is part of their country. Okay, so well that's very chaotic now, and that will not. And in fact, that's what I really fear. Okay, they might still have that idea of that the basis of their claim is historic, okay, or history. Now, but we are now an independent country a long time ago, okay, so they should respect that as an independent country. So in fact, right now they're claiming other islands part of the Philippines within our exclusive economic zone, as I discussed. Okay, since it cannot acquire a territory if it's just a rock. Okay, so what they did, if it's a rock, they reclaim it, so that because in the in the UN Charter or international law, if it's an island, it can acquire a regime, or meaning it has its extended territory. Okay, so if it's a rock, part of it, and then it still has its own contiguous zone, exclusive economic zone, it will go beyond Philippines. Okay, so general rule is that if the body if the body of water is between two coastal states, then the boundary is the middle. Okay, so it's known as the middle of the bridge or middle of the navigable water. So if it's the bridge is the boundary, then half of that bridge is the boundary. The middle of the bridge is the boundary. Okay. So going back to that, as I elaborate further on United Nation, well, there are rules which Russia violated. Okay. We'll just discuss things which are probably applicable. We cannot discuss all which are not maybe applicable at this time. Okay. So when you invade, okay, there's also another rule that you have to follow, and that is the Geneva Convention, okay, or the International Humanitarian Law, okay. And what is that? Like you are not allowed to make a soldier a child who is below 18, okay. And if you are an enemy, you have to wear really an insignia of the country that you represent, or wearing their uniform. You're not allowed to use other uniforms. You have to attack only civilians, nothing else. No, no, you are not allowed to attack civilians. Okay, because they are not combatant. And what happened right now, as I view the news just lately, Russians raped some of the women, killed civilians. So well, that's really the effect when you cannot control your men, or when it is war. Nobody obeys the law still, and they violated the international humanitarian law. Okay, and I can tell at this moment that it's not really effective. Why? Somebody commits a crime, but no one is punished. Okay, they cannot punish, and that if they cannot punish, it will become a precedent that other countries may still do the same. Okay, it will ripple to other countries. It is a it will become a it will be repeated all over again. So well, probably the president of that country is so wise. He knew that the leaders are weak. Upon knowing all these leaders are weak, then he invade. Upon knowing that Ukrainian president is just a comedian, he invaded. He was thinking all the while that similar to what he did in Crimea a long time ago, that they got the land without even a fight. Okay, so they're so wise. They had a propaganda before colonizing, and their propaganda as their justification to invade Ukraine was that it's not Nazi. Okay, they're like Nazi. No, it's their enemy along in an olden war. So their acts, which is not actually a war as they call it, it's just a military exercise. It's a denazification. Okay, so with that word, if you are an enemy, you will not be aware that there is war going on. And that's also another violation of the international humanitarian law, that you should be a chivalric. Okay? A chivalric means you are like a man. When you say war, you tell them that we are to war. Do not strike them at the back, which is treacherous. Treacherous. Okay? Treachery is committed when the person deliberate deliberates the killing with ease without giving him a chance to fight, to defend himself. Okay? So that's another violation. Aside from raping of women, then you imagine you had all the power, you had all the armaments, and your enemy is weak, they do not have, and then you invade them. Of course, that country has no fight, cannot fight, and it will just be a massacre rather than calling it a war. So you know what happened? There are many countries who help them. In fact, civilians volunteered to fight. So that's really the problem of the United Nations Charter. It was created unequally. And right now, I am planning to write an article published in an international journal. Okay, and I do not have yet the perhaps other things which I have not um, venture yet. Okay. In fact, I think I gave this as an assignment to you, right? To comment, and I don't know if you already submitted. Were you able to submit it? I posted this one in the Google Classroom. Were you able to submit? Naka-submit. Were you able to view it or what? Okay, okay. Um, so it's not in because I have not provided you with the katong question, no, for you to comment there in the classwork. Wala. Okay. Anyway, some of you already submitted. So partly that will be that will be submitted. Okay, and I'm really planning to change it. Okay, come up with a new United Nations Charter. It's really a problem. The problem is not the country, it's the UN Charter's problem. Okay, Um, Look at the organization we had in the local government units. Okay, if you notice, if you are committing something, you will be in prison. Okay, and this one, okay, another country invading cannot even be punished. So I think there is really a problem. Okay, and the problem I see is the charter itself. If we can change it, craft a new one, call all the members, all countries, for them to decide and draft a new policy, perhaps it can be resolved. Because if it cannot be changed, I tell you, there will be another invasion. Okay, and you know what happened in invasion? There are many who will die. Family will be destroyed. Okay, it's brutal and it's barbaric. Now, so a little of explanation of international law. Okay, okay, we're done discussing it. The United Nations Charter and um. By the way, another thing which I would like to add about this Minsk agreement, it's actually an international law still, part of a treaty. Okay, it's a treaty actually. An agreement is similar to a treaty where the under the Minsk agreement, these countries that are former USSR before, including Ukraine, okay, and some of the western part of the countries, had a draft, okay, that these countries after the lost will not join NATO. Okay, will not join NATO because NATO was initially created to fight against the USSR because USSR is a big country and they keep on invading another country. So what happened was that there was a Minsk agreement. Minsk is a capital of a certain country, and they had this agreement that those former USSR or former Soviet Union will not join the NATO. Okay, and this includes that the Ukraine, another Western USSR, and East Europe. Okay, so one of the justification is that it violates the Minsk agreement, but it's not really a violation. It's just that they really wanted to conquer and get the land because Ukraine is a fertile soil. And in fact, one of the islands there that they colonize is very fertile. It's an agricultural land, and they depended so much of their water from the mainland Ukraine. So since they had a disagreement because this mainland cut off their water supply, that's another justification. But that was a former lands owned by Ukraine that they um, insidiously get or got without having a fight. So that's one. Okay, so Ukraine is powerful, also the best in agriculture, a very fertile soil. They export the mga wheat and other agricultural products. So in fact, if the war will still continue, and right now, you know the news, right? Kiev was liberated, I think, a day ago, and other some of the towns, and I think Russia now is losing this war. Okay, they had no more perhaps military or whatever. But I would like to just say comment on something. One of the professors in political science, I will not mention what school, but they're praising. I know you may praise Russia, but you know in these times of you just compare, you balance how you decide. You may be pro or against Russia, or you may be pro or against one of the country in the Western territories. So it's just imagine, most of the countries are now denouncing the act, and here comes a professor from other school praising, admiring so much of the acts. Can you imagine professor like that? Okay, has no this country that they praise does not even contribute much to the world. Does not even contribute to your learning as student. You didn't Google their country. In fact, their country cannot even their language cannot even be understood. Unlike in some countries where we exchange our ideas, right? And here comes a country who not even contribute except for the use of a machine that will kill us. Okay, still a professor's praising them. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how would the student behave? How are you going to decide? Okay, I'll just piece over this kind of professor who are I'm trying to upload this one, but because I am after of the effects to this country, if we had this kind of professor discussing negative things on a country that somehow in one way or another at this time contributed so much. Okay, the act itself, anybody can decide that act of aggression, okay, is illegal. Okay, and the consequence of that, many people died, and yet here's a professor from other university praising those acts. Okay, so I was expecting that in the end students will become rebels because the way they were trained to decide is a leftist really. And no wonder why we have so many rebels in our country because even professors teaching the other way around. Okay, so you may be trained critically, but at this time you should know how to wait or which thing. Why is it that most countries decided in their favor, and yet only one country, maybe or two countries in favor of them, okay, or in fact nobody, and yet this professor praising them, praising that country who brutally kill civilians. Okay, and they're so famous. I don't know what happened. And, if I am the president, I should monitor all his acts, or in fact assign him to another professions where we all have probably students will be trained on how to weigh things. Okay, not that simply being biased of what you perceived. Although Americans perhaps bring horror to us in some way or another, but at this time I'm referring to at this moment. Okay, when the situation um, is so delicate, people might be people might be um, persuaded, okay, and convinced and justify the acts of aggression by other country. Okay, they may soon become a die-hard supporter supporter. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is before you decide, think it over. Decide when you decide, think it. What are the pros and cons? What did this country contribute to the world? Okay, what did they contribute? Okay, only terror. Okay, we cannot even get what they know. Why? Because their knowledge is not put in a book. We cannot read Russian books. Did they contribute anything to us? Well, no, we do not. Okay, so maybe because of the rocket that fires going up to the other country, but it's all theirs. That's the problem of a communist country before, although it's a democratic now. But this countries was this mentality of to seclude from other countries, close themselves. Um, it cannot. No other countries cannot benefit from them. Okay, so what happened? Let's say China, for example, did not join World Trade Organization, and what did they do? They just copied the invention of another country, and they cannot be sued. Why? Because they are not members of the World Trade Organization. Okay, there we have an agreement known as the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. They are not members on it. Okay, General Agreement on Tariff and Services under the World Trade Organization. They're not members. So if they copy, then they cannot be sued. There's no violation of the copyright, okay, or patent. And that's what they did. That's why they sell their products at a very low price because they did not pay patent. Okay, all they have to do is copy all the inventions of other world, okay, other countries, and then bring it and sell it in their in 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 other countries because they have the network. Okay, so that is the effect. So that's the reason why when they sell products is very low, okay, very low of quality, okay, because they just copied it. Okay, and in fact that's the reason also why Russia's military equipments um, malfunction because it's made in China. Okay, and also because of corruption. Okay, instead of buying the genuine parts from uh, a country known of its goodwill, like Japan or other countries, they just bought it from a country which is not known for quality. So it backed down. So what happened? It was told by farmers. It's now owned by farmers. So the greatest armory now is found in the barn of farmers. It's now in the it's now owned by the farmers. It was towed by a tractor, so they brought it to their homes. So it's now owned by the farmers. So when you go to Ukraine, um, do not worry about military. Uh, worry about the farmers because they had tanks in their farmland. Okay, so that is the that's how you should weigh. Okay, so these countries, this is what I observed. Actually, I was pro-communist. Okay, before there's a good thing about communism, but when you not contribute anything to the world, okay, and you invade something, and here's for us to decide which is better. We better had it to countries that contributed so much of what we are now. Okay, what do we get from communist countries? Nothing, because they always close themselves. Okay, they do not want to trade with us, so they just want to get from us, but we cannot get from them. Okay, so where will you search? Where do you get those informations you have? It comes from the Western world. Okay, so almost all countries, even former Soviet Union, wanted to join NATO. Okay, okay, because they will learn many things from the West rather than joining those previous communist countries. Okay, so that is how we should decide. Okay, that how you should weigh things. Do not just simply criticize and being pessimistic in all aspects. When you decide, you criticize, and you also give positive aspects. Do not just simply criticizing without giving an option. If you criticize something that you see as not good, then provide them with the means how to correct it. Because if you keep on criticizing, the person will have the tendency of not doing it anymore. Okay, and they will not they will be confused in what to do next. So if you want to criticize, then give an option. So this is what you're going to do. That's bad. So this is the option. This is what you're going to do. Not just simply criticizing without telling them what is the correct. Okay, and that's sometimes what the leftists do. They criticize, but they do not give an option. When they are in the office, they do not know what to do. Why? Because they keep on criticizing, and they do not see what's the positive aspect. Okay, so when you criticize, there must be something that you can contribute, not just criticizing it's bad and then like that, and you not even give them the other way of doing things. Okay, so that is in English that is called constructive criticism. Okay, Now, so that is how you should behave, no? Because as I know, especially this coming election, some of you may be engrossed with other politician. Okay, perhaps what they're going to do is simply listen and then criticize what are the pros and cons. Okay, not just simply um, criticizing another. Um, although some are actually paid by that certain candidate. Okay, so well, it's your choice as well. Okay, because in elections sometimes we get money out of the money from politicians. Now, so what is an international agreement, and be would it be effective? Okay, or what is the effect of that to the country, or as distinguish that from a treaty? Okay, so treaty, the steps is there will be a communication. Okay, the intention must be communicated first, and then just an overview. But you can check this one in the Geneva Convention and the consular practices. Okay, the intention must be sent to the heads of state or government. Okay, and later on they're going to clarify it by other communications representing the state, which is now under the Department of Foreign Affairs. Okay, that prepares the documents to clarify further agreements. When it is clarified, when terms are defined, then it will be returned to the country for the ratification. And the ratification must be in the Senate, and the vote is two-thirds. Two-thirds. Okay? So, for it, no, it's not actually the Senate. The Senate two-thirds will only concur, but the ratification is by the President. So, take note of that. Okay? The Senate will concur, two-thirds vote of Senate, but it's the President who will concur. Now, what happens if the President did not submit it to Senate for concurrence? What is the effect of the treaty? Okay, is it still binding between countries? The effect of that is that it is like a gentleman's agreement, and a gentleman's agreement or executive agreement, it's still binding between heads of state. Okay, so take note of that. Now, for the treaty that which is controversial, when the president, according to him, what's this? Right. You can turn off the quick access limit. You can join the call and the call to everyone. I did not press this one. After one, in the press exit. So, what happened in the agreement where Philippines should be a party to the international humanitarian, the human rights, and then the human rights. What I understand is that it was not passed to the there was no publication. Okay, it was not published, okay, according to the president. So general is that if there's a law, according to, in fact this is applicable to all laws, that it must be published Okay, publication is a requirement. The publication must be in official gazette. I don't know, in the official gazette and in the UP Law Center. Okay, and according to the president, why he exited is because it was not published. It was not published. He is not aware. He's not aware of that law, which probably, according to him, is a defense of not a party to the international humanitarian law. But I think it's also there's also wrong in his claim because if it's an agreement or treaty, it's not equivalent to a really a law because what the law which requires publication are only laws crafted by Congress. And from my understanding, that exempts the publication or or treaties. Okay, so and right now they are still bound by the international by the human rights. What does it mean by human rights? Any violation actually of the human rights in the law of the US, they have this different unique law that wherever you are, they have jurisdiction if you violated human rights. Okay, so it's a very unique law because you might be in trouble with other country because each country is separate. Okay, and you have no authority when the person is already in another jurisdiction, except when you had an extradition treaty. An extradition treaty, of course, has a dual, um, known as the double criminality, meaning if the country where he is hiding also punish the crime that he committed abroad, well, he can be extradited. But if the crime he committed abroad is not punishable in the country where he is sojourning or hiding, then he cannot be extradited. Okay, and also there must be an agreement of extradition between two countries. So if those countries has no extradition treaty, well, you are free to roam around. You cannot be arrested. Now, in the U.S. laws, they have different. If you committed a crime in another country and you are hiding somewhere else, they have jurisdiction. So, and but that's very unique law, and that would really create trouble. So, I think also that should be corrected with the new what I'm proposing a new UN charter, so that they are only capable of um, having jurisdiction in their own lands. Then, if you are already somewhere else, then that country has no jurisdiction over you, except again if there is an extradition. Okay, so example of that is when Bin Laden, who is the head of or the mastermind of the 9/11 attack, okay, he was in other country, but US went to that country where he's hiding and then kill him. Okay, so that's a very unique law, and that will soon create trouble. Now, so in the humanitarian as human rights, okay, um, if you violated a crime or violation of human rights, then you will be tried. This is actually a separate organ of the United Nations, okay, known as the international. It's not an organ, but another law, okay. Um, International Humanitarian United Nations. It's in United Nations still rather that watch um, leaders who committed violations of human rights. So these countries, okay, they have their own um, influence. Sometimes when a country is violating or even just a prospect, then US will intervene, always intervene. The good thing also of that is that it can prevent other heads to be aware, okay, and to be very careful if they violated abuses on their citizens, because there is really a tendency of violating these rights, okay, because it's how you show power and control the people by um, limiting their rights. So in abuse of that, then you will be held liable by the United Nations, and that United Nations is again spearheaded by United States. So between that executive agreement and a treaty, an executive agreement is entered between heads of state and another heads of state. An equivalent of that is still binding. So even if it is not ratified, then the effectivity still of that, of the executive agreement is binding. It's as if it is a treaty. Okay. So, but what is the difference between ordinary treaty and executive agreement? Okay, executive agreement is just an agreement between two countries, two heads of state, not necessarily um, Department of Foreign Affairs or the alter ego of the president, who is the executive, other the department heads. Okay, so generally it will go into if it's a treaty, there will be steps. Last step will be ratification by the president, concurred by the Senate, okay, and registered in the United Nations. Okay, so if it's just an agreement between heads of state, it is called executive agreement, but it is also binding, as if it is a treaty. Okay. Now, the under the Geneva Convention, going back to the Geneva Convention, if you declare war, you are only allowed to kill civilian military in uniform, and if they declare themselves to be non-combatant by raising their hands and they can no longer fight, then they are entitled to rights. Okay, so they will be declared as prisoners of war, and a prisoners of war shall be treated humanely. Okay, that's the irony of war. Okay, if the person has a gun, you can kill him, but if he raises hand, you cannot kill him anymore. Okay, so there's really a thin line that distinguishes a combatant from a non-combatant. When he raises hands to surrender, then he is no longer combatant, and you are not allowed to kill him. Okay, so raising of a white flag is considered a non-combatant or horse the combat. Those who are wounded soldiers can no longer fight, can no longer fight, should be treated as non-combatant, and should be considered as prisoners of war. You're not allowed to poison the well or anything that will um, kill the entire population, including civilian. Um, you are not allowed to bomb a residential area. You are only you are only allowed to shoot on a military equipment, and um, that's where the military is hiding. Okay. So here's one thing that I would criticize. Now, if it's a conflict between countries, and the problem is that they always bring with their soldiers. Okay. If it's only a conflict between heads of state, what I suggest that they should fight, excluding the civilians. Okay. And they should not take the land, because the land is belongs to the people. Okay. It's owned by the people already. You cannot just get it by simply declaring a war. Okay. So it's like robbing a country. So those are the things that you should understand. Okay. Um, okay. So far now, I hope it will be resolved peacefully. The other country wanted to resolve it peacefully, but the other doesn't want to, so it cannot be resolved. And right now, I understand he is now hiding in the bunker, maybe afraid of that somebody will kill him, or he is planning to use the atomic bomb or nuclear bomb. Okay, so they are maybe capable of doing that to destroy the entire humanity by just mere button, one possible button. So for the next meeting, okay, you watch the video I already uploaded in the